Well, last week, Patrick Cantlay, a player director on the PGA Tour Policy Board, confirmed that a group of PGA Tour players were planning to meet with the head of Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund in an effort to continue to broker a deal between the tour and the sovereign wealth fund known as PIF. On Sunday night, Rory McIlroy was asked for his opinion on this meeting.
Rory, it's been confirmed that there is a meeting tomorrow with the player directors and PIF. Do you welcome that? Do you think that's a good thing that's going to happen there?
Absolutely. I think it should have happened months ago. So I'm glad that it's happening, and hopefully that progresses conversations and gets us closer to a solution.
Does Tiger need to be involved in that, you think, at this point? Is that
I mean, he's a player director. He's on the board, so absolutely needs to be involved.
What do you hope their message is? What do you hope their takeaway after you've met Yasir, you know what his interest is in golf? What do you hope they take from that meeting?
The players or the PIF?
The players.
The players. That fundamentally he wants to do the right thing. I think I've said this before. I have spent time with Yasir, and the people that have represented him in LIV, I think, have done him a disservice. So Norman and those guys, I see the two entities, and I actually think there's a really big disconnect between PIF and LIV. I think you've got PIF over here and LIV are sort of out there, sort of doing their own thing. So the closer that we can get to Yasir, PIF, and hopefully finalize that investment, I think that would be a really good thing.
As we say hello again to Todd Lewis and Steve Burkowski. Okay, Todd, what can you tell us about this meeting, and what could it mean for a future agreement, perhaps, between PIF and the PGA Tour?
Well, both sides are keeping this close to the vest, and you understand why. They want to not negotiate in public. But from what I understand, this is just going to be putting a face to a name in regards to the PGA Tour players that are there, that are part of the PGA Tour Policy Board. Tiger Woods was not in the field here at the Players. He's the only player director from the PGA Tour Policy Board not in the field. So I understand he is down in Albany meeting as well. This is, again, just a formal hello and trying to understand each other's intentions, which I understand from both sides is to try to get a deal done. Now, you may think that the PGA Tour seems desperate to get a deal done with the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. That may be what it looks like out there. But I can tell you that PIF, they want to be a part of the PGA Tour as well. If you think about what they're doing, first off, they have hemorrhaged a lot of money. A lot of money. They cannot get any commercial business here in the United States, can't get any traction there because of where the money is coming from. Companies are really hesitant to latch themselves on to LIV Golf. And secondly, they just don't have the popularity here in the United States compared to the PGA Tour. Their viewership, a fraction of what it is on the PGA Tour. So they would like some legitimacy, and getting together with the PGA Tour would help them do so. From what I understand, there are three things that are going to be big discussion points if this deal is going to get done. Number one, of course, how much money is going to be invested. Number two, where does the team aspect come into play here? Because the Saudis and Yasir Al-Rumayyan, who is the governor of the PIF, he really wants to have a team component in its relationship with the PGA Tour and PGA Tour Enterprises. And thirdly, the pathway back for the LIV golfers to play on the PGA Tour. That may be the biggest thing that they're going to have to discuss, because there's a lot of friction on the PGA Tour. It depends on which player you talk to in regards to how those players from LIV Golf would get back on the PGA Tour if indeed that's going to happen.
All right, fascinating stuff. Last Tuesday, of course, PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan met with the media for the first time in months, and it came to mixed reviews. With the ongoing negotiations happening then behind the doors, even as late as today, it's an interesting time for the commissioner and certainly his relationship with players. Of course, multiple players have expressed a lot of opinions across a broad array on what they think about the job performance of Jay Monahan. So, Burko, from frustration to claims of being left out of the loop, I'm curious what your thoughts are about where the players are, stars or rank and file, in terms of softening of the heart or hardening of their hearts when it comes to Jay Monahan.
I think it's fatigue, Matt. I think for all the players at one level or another, for us in the media, we were clamoring to hear what Commissioner Jay Monahan would say, and a lot of the players, like, he is in a no-win situation. Some have been very upfront, honest, saying he has work to do to earn my trust back. Jay Monahan has referenced the fact he has not handled things perfectly, that he does have to win the trust of some of the world's best and the rank and file as well. I think after an hour of Jay Monahan in the press center last week, I left with more questions than answers. I understand the fact, Todd touched on it, when you have negotiations of this level, and Jay said it point blank, we can't answer what you want to hear right now. These are behind closed doors with just some, half dozen integral parts of a potential formation moving forward. But the players, the consensus for me, they're like, I'll believe it when I see it. I can't believe it's taken this long. There hasn't been a lot of love, if you will, for we love the direction. We just heard Rory from yesterday, Sunday after the players. You could see he was almost exhausted answering it. The answers were a little short. It's about time. It should have happened a long time ago. Maybe something today can be a springboard to moving forward. But as Todd and I both know, negotiations of this level, while we might want answers and a resolution, it's going to take much longer than I believe most expect. And as a whole, the players are done talking about it. They just want to go play golf.
Yeah, I think no doubt that the players are fatigued, and for a lot of reasons, they feel like there's some trust that needs still to be rebuilt. We heard Xander Schauffele talk about that earlier in the week. But at the same time, if you look at how fractured this sport is, a lot of the players that I have talked to are starting to turn around and say, okay, look, we're going to have to figure this out with the Saudis, and maybe the deal is probably the best thing that can happen. And Jay Monahan, he's been involved since the beginning. I'm going to trust him and the people around him to try to get this done. I don't think there is as much venom towards Jay Monahan as it was a summer ago. And I think, frankly, I didn't think he did a bad job. He like Burko said, he couldn't negotiate in public. He spoke with a sense of authority. He's trying to do the best for the membership. And we're just going to have to see. Jay Monahan's legacy is going to be played out right now on what he does with the Saudis in this deal moving forward, and where the PGA Tour, what it looks like 2 years from now.
It will be very, very interesting to see what comes out of this, and perhaps the news we get over the coming hours as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. And